In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World, episode 24. Andrew and Jerry tell the truth about the January 6th show trial. I am Andrew Langer.
I'm Jerry Rogers.
And yeah, I mean, it's the thing that occurred to me. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff today. We're going to talk about this gun legislation that passed the House. We're going to talk about the president's appearance on Jimmy Kimmel, as crazy as that was, the unfortunate comments of Congresswoman Debbie Stabenow from Michigan about electric cars. And we're going to do a tribute to someone important in Jerry's life who's having a birthday. And then we're going to peer into a mystery about the origin of a song by one of Jerry's favorite rock and roll bands. So stay tuned for the whole show today, because we'll get your take on this as well. Let's start with, in fact, let's just get into it. Let's go to our Ripped from the Headlines segment.
Ripped from the Headlines.
So yeah, there's a lot to talk about. You know, I got off the air yesterday, and thanks once again to the folks at WMAL for letting me sit in with Larry O'Connor. I'll tease the dates that I'm coming back for that. I didn't realize, well, anyway, I didn't realize at the time that as I was getting off the air, there had been this arrest of this deranged man who wanted to kidnap and or kill, possibly kidnap, certainly thought about killing himself, Justice Kavanaugh. That was all unfolding. The House seemed to be able to pass gun control legislation, but can't pass the legislation protecting the justices that's been languishing where they are.
And I love the it's about guns, all about guns. It's just about guns, virtue signalers, because you see already in social media that doesn't a third grader deserve as much protection as a Supreme Court justice and this sort of thing. And, you know, my response to that is that why can't we secure schools, and why can't we secure the lives and the safety of Supreme Court justices? Why is it one or the other?
Well, and more to the point, so Patton Oswalt, who's a comedian that I do enjoy his comedy.
I would love to step on his head today.
But that's just it.
He's let me say this right now. He's a little shit is what he is.
And his comment yesterday, this is what Jerry's referring to. He tweeted out yesterday, why shouldn't the Kavanaugh family just having a single point of entry to their house?
What a jerk.
And firearms. And listen, I am sure Brett Kavanaugh would love to have a gun to be able to protect his family in his house.
But again, does Patton Oswalt think he's being cute, clever, funny there?
100% that's what he thinks he's doing. That's 100% what he thinks he's being. He thinks he's being cute. That's exactly what he is.
But again, just for clarity, you know, and I'm sorry for saying the obscenity, but I saw that tweet and I thought to myself, what a jerk.
Yeah.
What a real jerk, because the bottom line is this. Anyone who doesn't want to have a conversation about securing our schools, and my goodness, a single point of entry makes 100% perfect sense. We're not saying that you don't have fire exits and other exits to the building. What we're saying is that if a visitor or someone who means to do great harm comes to the school, there's only one way in. Right? Listen, think of the movie 300.
Oh, that's not where I thought you were going. Not 300.
Well, 300, right? What do? Right? They made it so the enemy could only come through this narrow pass.
Let me make an even more relevant movie reference here about single points of entry. What about Lean on Me? This was the basis that Principal Joe Clark, in the Newark High School, he said, right? It was Newark. Patterson High Schools, right? He said he chained the doors. Now, we don't want to chain the doors, but as he said, if we could only get those fire doors like the fancy white schools, I wouldn't have this problem.
Right.
You know, he wanted a single point of entry.
But there are politicians.
Hold on, Jerry. I mean, your kids are in parochial school.
Yes.
My kids have been in public school, and I know we've brought this up before. I don't know about you, but I know that wherever I've gone to a school in the last, if the last, it's not 18 years, but for the last 13 years that my kids have been in schools, 15 years that my kids have been in schools, there has been a single point of entry in all of those schools. You come in and you are admitted almost always directly into the office. If not, you have to buzz in. Somebody has to buzz you in, and you have to go to school security immediately. I mean, is that I mean, I don't want to give anything away.
Of course, no. Where my two youngest go to school, Bridget. I'm sorry. I have so many kids. Liam and Grace. Yes, you walk in a single entry, set of doors. Then you're in a lobby, and there's another set of doors, and there's cameras. The interior doors are bulletproof.
Yes.
And there's a camera, and there is a check-in mechanism, and then you are greeted and you are brought immediately to the office. Now, if you're an unknown, you don't get buzzed in.
That's right.
And so again, and no one is seriously suggesting that this is a bad idea, except politicians and entertainers, who want the issue more than they want a solution.
That's right. That's right. And keeping in mind, right, it is all about taking steps to minimize risk. We know that with this Uvalde shooting situation, that it was a situation in which there was a single point of entry, but the door got propped open, which again would have driven Principal Joe Clark insane, right? That's the whole point.
I have a question about that too, because, and again, this is the problem.
About Joe Clark, because I love that movie, and I will watch that movie over and over again. And I found out that the custodian, Reverend Slappy, was really a custodian and was a reverend in the community. But
we played Patterson East Side when I was a kid. We played him in football.
Is that right?
We played the Ghosts. Yeah.
And did they push you all around the field? Did they push you all around?
I went to the greatest football program on the East Coast, Bergen Catholic. No one pushed us around. But let me say this though. This shouldn't be controversial.
No.
We should have again, you don't want a one size fits all. So you let jurisdictions and different districts do it their way, but the standard should be the same, and there should be a single point of entry. Well, just when COVID, where schools, public schools and private schools, spent tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to protect the schools against COVID, right? With plexiglass, with other mechanisms and air filtrations. Why is it that we can do that in short order, but we can't simply agree that we're going to fortify our schools? I know people don't like to hear the word fortify, but the fact of the matter is, you go to a jewelry store, you go to an office building, you go to a government building, you go to a bank, you go to any other public space, and guess what? They're fortified.
Gary, but it's not even a question of calling it fortification. I mean, again, there's a language that's in there, right? But the issue really is whether or not something becomes a soft target or a target of opportunity, as we have talked about. And obviously we're going to learn more about, about
I was asking this question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
please.
Look, because politicians and entertainers and the news media immediately politicize the Uvalde shooting, like any shooting.
Oh my God.
The information that was coming out was slow, was often contradicted other information. So initially the information was that a teacher had propped open the door. It turns out that's not true. Okay. So again, my question is twofold.
Well, then explain to our audience then how the Uvalde shooter got in.
Well, that's the broader question.
Yeah.
Why was the shooter outside shooting for 10 minutes?
Yes.
With no confrontation. And then no one has answered the question yet. How did he get into the school?
There you go. All right.
I mean, but these are basic. Why weren't the police on the scene to confront him and stop him before he got into school? He was, by all accounts, he was outside shooting his weapon for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And then somehow he was able to gain entry. Again, we're having debates on Capitol Hill. The president and his spokespersons are shaming people. We have the Chuck Schumer saying that Republicans have blood on their hands, and yet we don't know how the shooter got into the building.
Well, and
how about you figure that out?
Yeah, this gets back into what I have one of the longstanding quotes that I use. You're all very tired of me hearing. Actually, for those of you just joining us, because there are people who are now just starting to listen and joining us. There's a case from the 1990s about federalism, and there it was written by Justice Andrew Day O'Connor, and it really sums up the essence of our constitutional republic. And reminds me of something I responded to on Twitter yesterday. But the quote is, "The Constitution protects us from our own best intentions." All right. So the Constitution protects us from our own best intentions. It divides power among sovereigns and among branches of the government precisely so that we might resist the temptation to concentrate power in one branch as the expedient solution to the crisis of the day.
Which,
right?
by the way, this is exactly, great point, Andrew.
Yeah, thank you.
This is exactly the unanimous idea from the left, and that is they want to concentrate power.
Yes.
Why does California have only 2 Senate seats when Idaho has 2?
Thank you for bringing this up, because that's what it dovetails into, which is this quote, the tweet that came out yesterday about the Senate and the Senate power, and this is not what democracy looks like. And my response was, yeah, that's right. This is not what democracy looks like. We are not a democracy. We are a democratic republic. We are a Republican democracy, not a pure democracy, right? So the idea is we have certain aspects of our lives that are democratic, right? People vote on things. We have representatives in the House of Representatives. They are balanced out by a Senate that originally was envisioned to have come out of our state legislatures, so the states had a more direct voice in what was going on. That was the whole point. But the whole idea is, hold on. Let me finish my thread here.
Yeah.
The whole idea is democracy. Pure democracy is 2 wolves and a sheep deciding on what to have for dinner.
Right.
And so, but a republic such as the one we have protects the rights of the sheep. The right.
And I've heard you say this very clearly, and I agree with you. And that is the Electoral College, the Senate, how we federalism, the separation of powers. This ultimately are all mechanisms to protect the minority and minority rights from a tyrannical majority.
Right.
This is what the left doesn't understand. Democracy, and this was, again, let's take one step backwards. This was the George W. Bush problem in Afghanistan and in Iraq. They pushed the idea of democracy.
Ding, ding.
But the thing is that, well, the people could vote for a dictator.
Yes.
And the dictator can then implement tyranny.
Yes.
And so we don't want pure democracy, because pure democracy leads to tyranny. And we have to have checks and balances.
And we should have had we should have been promoting liberty. And this
property rights, the rule of law,
a great
protection for minorities, etc.
A great segue. Listen, something I said this on the air on Tuesday. I'll repeat it again for those of you who don't know. 2 of the greatest books that changed my life, literally changed my way of thinking about
I know
things.
one of them.
Which one?
Henry de Soto.
Yeah. Yes. Hernando de Soto.
I'm
Mystery
sorry.
of Capital by Hernando de Soto. And the other one is Property and Freedom by Richard Pipes. If I don't know where exactly they are on the show.
You have your background.
I was going to point to the shelves behind me, but instead I've got the background behind me.
Yeah.
By the way, hey, because I'll do my impression of Joe Biden. It's not a real radio studio behind us.
You know what? That's interesting, because did you watch? I watched clips of Jimmy Kimmel.
I got some. Hold on. Wait, Jerry. Let me just finish my thought on the De Soto thing. So, Hernando de Soto is The Mystery of Capital, and Richard Pipes, who was one of the architects of Ronald Reagan's Cold War strategy, wrote a book called Property and Freedom. And both books taken together paint a picture of the important role that private property rights and the rule of law play in creating stable and prosperous societies. And this is where we have failed, because we have never promoted those things.
And it goes, but it also goes to how our public schools have failed. We don't teach history. We don't teach the founding documents. Again, we're having this silly debate, and there are people who are saying, well, don't these Republicans understand what well-regulated means? Well, yes, we
do.
do. And it well regulated doesn't mean what you think it means.
That's exactly right.
I mean, it means well armed, well organized, well disciplined to attack the enemy. That's what it means.
We had Ilya Shapiro on earlier, right? Or we've had Ilya Shapiro on the podcast, haven't we?
Of course we have.
Not Ilya Shapiro. Eugene Volokh from UCLA Law School.
Yes, we did. Yes.
We had him on very early on.
Yeah.
We're now 24 episodes in now. I'm starting to forget what guests we have. This is where we are. So, Eugene Volokh is the person who proffered this, and it's incredibly important to recognize that sometimes words back then didn't mean what they meant today. And he talks about this issue. Well regulated meant effective. If it meant regulated in the modern parlance of the word, then the founders would have said, the authors would have said, well governed. And that's the point. And it makes perfect sense in the context of the Second Amendment.
You have elected officials. You have men and women who put their hand on whatever book, Bible or otherwise, take an oath to the Constitution, and they say things, tweet things, write things, they opine, they write op-eds, and they have no understanding of the law.
Yes.
And I'm sorry to say this, but it's the truth. Look, I'm not promoting Republican Partyism, but I will say this: the Democratic Party is untethered from history and from the law.
Well, listen, Jerry, this gets into what I said. Actually, one of the things I said here on Twitter, and I'm sharing my screen for those of you who are listening to the show, because one of the things that Joe Biden said was that the economy was the fastest growing, and as we now know, the economy shrunk last quarter. And as I said, if a bee can be a fish, then why can't a shrinking economy be the fastest growing economy?
The Democrats tweeted out yesterday that we have a 95% of the jobs lost due to COVID have now regained. They're back again. And I thought to myself, that's not a good stat.
Yes.
I mean, there's still 5% not there.
Yes.
I mean, this is not
which by the way is millions of people. I mean, it's not an insignificant statistic.
They manipulate. This truly is like, what is that Arnold Schwarzenegger movie where they manipulate everything? Not True Lies.
Total Recall.
Total Recall. This administration
recall
is like Total Recall in the sense that they redo, re-edit, change things and change meanings of words. You know what yesterday was, Andrew?
Well, what was yesterday?
It was the anniversary of the public of the George Orwell's 1984 being published.
That right? Oh, that was yesterday. I wish I'd known that to be on the air yesterday. That would have been fun to talk about.
But again, this administration demonstrates that you change the meaning of words, you change what history is. And this is what they're doing. He did it on Jimmy Kimmel last night.
Yeah, but let me. I'll come back to the Jimmy Kimmel thing in a second, Jerry, because you raise the point, which is, you change the meaning of words to suit your political outcomes over time, and we've talked about this. One of the things you and I have talked about is the shifting definition of racism over the course of time, such that essentially the definition is. Well, there are sort of two ways of looking at it, which is one, that racism is an institutional concept, and that it's that our institutions are racist based upon a variety of outcomes, or it is sort of this attitude that is endemic in anybody who is not of the minority race, right? And so everybody is racist, right? Which is this, whereas we know.
Well, no, check that. Not everyone is racist. All white people are racist.
Well, yes. Well,
and also, and
even colors, yes.
But again, that's the thing. We have redefined person of color.
Yes.
Like it's as if, again, they're gaslighting. And again, the outcome.
That's the point in the end, isn't it, Jerry? Because it creates a series of shifting goalposts, and it all moves. We've talked about this in terms of the concept of critical race theory, and how ultimately critical race theory, much in the same way that socialism is the transitional phase between capitalism and communism, critical race theory is the vehicle that delivers us from capitalism to communism. And they do it through these shifting definitions, so that whereas when we were kids and Larry O'Connor and I were talking about this on the other day. The issue of the collapse of the collapse of the meritocracy, or the idea that the conservative concepts of self-reliance and self-governance, and judging people by the content of their character and not the color of the skin, all of those things are now racist. Whereas we were taught to understand, or we were taught to believe when we were kids, that racism was bigotry. And part of it comes down, just bigotry. If you were, and that racism was evil, and the way you cured racism was that you weren't a bigot, that you embraced Martin Luther King's concept of judging people by the content of their character, not the color of their skin, and by being colorblind. So all of those things. Now, if you say that you are colorblind, you don't see race, that's racist.
Well, it's worse than that too, right? And I mentioned this last week. I'll mention it again. But John King, who's a former head of the Department of Education during the Obama years, he's running for governor in Maryland, and he had a great line in the gubernatorial debate last week where he said, it took me 25 miles and 3 generations to get to the stage. Yeah. And what he meant by that was his family were slaves in Maryland, in Gaithersburg, Maryland. His family were slaves. But however, he served in the White House of the first African-American elected to the White House. And so in 3 generations, he went from the slave house to the White House. And I thought, what a wonderful story. What a victory. What an example of America's promise. But instead, what he leveraged that story in a way to whine about racist dog whistling, like showing up on time. That's racist. Achievement is racist. Having standardized testing is racist. Right. I mean, so what they've done in terms of changing the
disciplining students, making sure that students do their homework. That's racist.
Everything is racist. Yes. Everything is racist.
And so mark my words though, Jerry, I'm going to say this now. I'm going to make a Jerry Rogers-like prediction about this, right? So in 40 years, we've come from 50 years. I'm going to say 40, just under 50 from when you and I were kids. We've come from the idea of the ink is black, the page is white. Together we learn to read and write. That's the 3 Dog Night, Jerry. Yeah. We've come to, and Martin Luther King's aphorisms and being colorblind. We've come to now being colorblind is being racist. And mark my words that 40 years from now, so it is 2022. By 2062, we're going to be back to, there's going to be a whole generation that has been taught that being colorblind is racist. Then they're going to get back to saying that if you're not colorblind, you're a racist. It's going to come full circle. Unless by the way, that's assuming that society still exists and we haven't entirely collapsed on ourselves.
Yeah, Jesus is coming back. Look up.
Yes. So you wanted to. So let me share the screen now. You wanted to talk about Kimmel. Where do you want to go with?
A couple of things, right? Let me just the obvious. This guy the president hasn't given a one-on-one with a journalist in months and months. He goes on Jimmy Kimmel. He, by the way, on his way there, you saw this, right? He stumbled up the stairs again.
Sure.
And here's my comment. In what world is this good for the president? He looked old. He looked confused. Jimmy Kimmel is behaving like a young grandson would behave with his impaired grandfather.
I'm sorry I don't have it up. I guess I could find it, but I don't want to do the search. Right where Joe Biden is talking about the messaging. I thought I did.
And then he goes into a kind of a and then goes off and talks about a totally different topic.
No, I thought there was a thing, and maybe it is. Maybe I will pull it. So let me see if I can find it real quick. He goes on and he talks about this issue of the messaging being the problem.
And as he's doing that, he's unable to.
Oh yeah, this is it. I don't know why. I thought I retweeted. Maybe I retweeted it a while ago. Let me share this. The messaging is the problem here, and this is by the way, this is the same guy. Actually, I'll make my point in a second. This is kind of long, but let me do this.
No question. So there's a lot of major things we've done, but what we haven't done is we haven't been able to communicate it in a way that is Make me say another way.
Well, see, that's kind of perfect. Yeah,
Well,
we haven't been able to communicate.
That's kind of
Look how
perfect.
the press has changed. Look how the press has changed.
It has changed. Oh, listen, I get it.
I know you overstand it.
Yeah.
You don't just understand it, you overstand it. But here's the deal. One of the things is that it's very difficult now to have even with notable exceptions, even the really good reporters, they have to get the number of clicks on nightly news.
All right.
So instead of asking a question, anyway, it's just everything gets.
This guy is not
Yes.
dealing with his full capacity.
Not playing with the full deck.
No, but here's the thing: a couple of things from what we saw yesterday. Number one, Jimmy Kimmel kept on saying, using the we Democrats, we. Again, it's telling the silent part out loud. The entertainment industry, big media, they're part of the Democratic Party coalition. Number one. Number two, earlier in the day, this was taped at 5:00 in the afternoon. However, there had been the news of this lunatic wanting to assassinate, murder of Brett Kavanaugh.
Yes.
And no one asked the president. Still, they haven't asked the president, do you condemn this? And why does that matter? Because President Trump would condemn something on a Tuesday. And then Wednesday, his White House spokesperson would be asked the question, why hasn't the president condemned this? Well, he did. He condemned it yesterday. Well, why hasn't he done so today? Okay, we condemn it today. Well, that's not the president saying it. It's you saying it. Oh, but he did it yesterday. They played these shell games where you had to constantly condemn the actions of others. No one has asked the vice president or the president whether or not they condemn the attempted assassination on Brett Kavanaugh.
Let me add to this, right? Because it goes a step further. You're absolutely correct. The press should have been asking this. Jimmy Kimmel should have asked it. But actually, Jimmy Kimmel shouldn't have even had to ask about it. The president of the United States going on Jimmy Kimmel last night and speaking to a Democratic audience should have the first thing out of his mouth should have been, Jimmy, before we go down this road, I got to say this lunatic who showed up at Brett Kavanaugh's house, this is unacceptable. I condemn this. And I want to make sure that my supporters, I want to make sure that all Americans understand this is not acceptable. None of this is acceptable.
And by the way, Andrew, you know what happened outside of Brett Kavanaugh's house last night?
Yeah, there was a protest.
There was a massive protest.
Yes, absolutely. 100%.
By the way, for our listeners, it's illegal.
It's a federal crime.
It's a federal crime what they're doing to intimidate a judge before a decision.
Let me explain why. And we had on Ilya Shapiro, and congratulations, by the way, to Ilya Shapiro on his new gig at the Manhattan Institute.
Yes.
Jerry, I'm sure you must have been proud of that as a Manhattan Institute alumni.
That's right. I'm very pleased.
So Ilya's going on there. Ilya wrote the book Supreme Disorder. And one of the things we talk about, and I wanted to have this conversation with Larry, and I didn't get a chance to. So I'll say this now. We have three branches of government that operate very differently, right? You have all power is supposed to come out of Congress through the legislative process. They have the power of the purse strings. It is then up to the executive branch to administer those laws, right? That's what you want. Now they can interpret, there are Supreme Court cases on that. But in terms of making sure that those two branches are doing their jobs within the construct, by the way, both of those branches are by necessity political. Right? It is what it is. This, this is why we use the phrase elections matter. Elections matter because of Congress, because they are supposed to be the wellspring of all that power. And elections matter with the executive branch because they are administering that power and they can interpret what Congress has said. It's just by definition. It's the way it is. It's the process. The process by which we solve problems is by necessity a political process. But the judicial branch, which is supposed to be the gatekeeper, which is supposed to call balls and strikes, now nominating and approving those judges and justices, that's a political process. But once they're on the high court, they are supposed to engage in their jobs in a way that is free from the political process, that is based on philosophy and what the law says and what their values are. Let me finish my point because I know you want to say something. They are supposed to do their jobs, right? This is why Ilya Shapiro, when he came on, said you don't want to use the process of nominations to achieve desired outcomes because every fact set is different, and you want them to judge these cases based upon the law and the fact sets that are in front of them, free from outside interference, right? They should not be pressured, whether it's by members of Congress or from the White House or the general public, because you want them to come up with decisions that actually are thoughtful and deliberative. And everything that you do that shortchanges that deliberative process makes the problems that we as a society face worse. Thus endeth the sermon.
That's 100% correct. And
and that's why we have a federal law that says you can't pressure judges. Right. That's why. You can't intimidate judges.
But for the left, for the media, for the Hollywood types, the ends justify the means. So if they get a good outcome, or they change the outcome on Roe v. Wade, well, then the protesting, the breaking of the law, the intimidation, the violence, it's all fine because the greater good.
And remember, right, this ties into something we've also said in the past, which is this progressive concept that speech is violence and violence is speech. Which is again, this is shades of a republic that is on the verge of collapse. And normally I'm not so Eeyorish about this, but all of these things in the last 24 hours.
Welcome to Jerry's mind.
Okay, welcome to Jerry's world. But here, let me ask you a question. Hold on. Well, before you ask your question, because I want to make a point about what the president said last night on Kimmel about the messaging and the media, right? Because he's focused. Oh, we need better media from the press. We need better stories coming out of the press. This is the same White House that was lamenting just days ago how frustrated they were that when people drive down the street, they see rising gas prices on every corner where there's a gas station. And it's not the reason why Biden's numbers are in the toilet isn't because he's losing the New York Times and the Washington Post, which he really isn't losing. His numbers are in the toilet because people are getting access to information that isn't filtered by a leftist press. And so, there's only so many ways you can polish a turd, Jerry. In the end, it's still a turd. And so,
he's also very frustrated that his numbers are worse than Donald Trump's. I mean, he's at 33% approval right now. Yes.
And he's at 33% approval rating with a press that is not 95% against him as they were with Donald Trump.
Exactly right. This issue of
you were going to ask me a question.
Well, the question is this, and that is, this week is the J6 committee, right? The primetime Hollywood produced January 6th production. The media is not hiding its purposes here. Politico has a story today that the curtain comes up on the J6 committee. You have mentioned this already. They have a big Hollywood or news.
They have
media.
They have the, and I didn't mention at the top of the show. Let's explain here. So hold on for a second. Actually, let's set it up.
I do have a question for you though.
All right. Well, give me a second. Let's
set it up, and then I'm going to answer the question.
Let's set it up.
Go ahead.
So you have hearings. We have had hearings that have been televised in prime time before, right? The Watergate hearings were televised in prime time. Other hearings have been televised in prime time, but that coverage was essentially like C-SPAN's coverage is now. You have a couple of cameras. It also was in response to the public's interests. Yes. Oh, well,
the public was interested in what was happening in Watergate.
Yes. And so, but it was essentially the bare bones. It was not, right. It was not one side. Now, there were media outlets that had their thumbs on the scale with regards to Watergate or other things. But at least with the hearing portion of it, the televised portion of the hearings, their thumbs were not on the scale. Right. It was just showing what was happening inside the halls of Congress. But now the Democrats have hired, right? They have hired the former president of ABC News, right, to come in and produce their thing. It is quite literally, Jerry, and I mentioned this on the air. It is like the movie Wag the Dog. David Mamet script, Barry Levinson directed film in which a Hollywood producer is hired to produce a fake war, to distract the public away from the president's failing ratings because of a scandal. So this is what they've done. And it's not going to be just people sitting behind a chair or I'm sorry, a table and testifying to members of Congress sitting up on a dais. It is going to be the members. It is going to be videos. They're going to play videos of the depth. And I'm not making shtick here, right? I said on the air the other day, they'll probably do docudramas. No, literally, this is literally what they're doing. Video clips from depositions, members speaking, slickly produced videos elsewhere. It literally is going to be a multimedia Hollywood style news production. Go ahead, Jerry.
Question. And well, the question is this: during the Kavanaugh, during the Gorsuch hearings for their nomination, you had the majority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, in front of the Supreme Court shout shrill that these Supreme Court justices will feel the what did he say? The whirlwind?
Reap the whirlwind.
Yes.
Yes.
You won't know what hit you.
Yeah.
And then this week we have an assassin arrested before he could kill Brett Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
There's no trial. There's no committee hearings. There's no news coverage. Why isn't Chuck Schumer? Why aren't the Democrats being held to account for this kind of rhetoric?
We know the answer, Jerry. Listen, it's the same reason why, if you look at the June 2020 riots outside of, or was it May or June 2020 riots outside of the White House, where they had to disperse the crowd because they were in danger of breaching the White House fences. It's the same reason why they don't call that an insurrection. And I think I don't remember if anybody was killed. I don't think anybody was killed. I know there were people who were injured, seriously injured, federal law enforcement officials,
right.
Outside of the White House and of course the media spun that story later on that the president cleared it for a photo op, which is patently untrue.
They breached the White House.
Well, they breached
the property.
They breached the outside property. Yes.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. Again, how is that not in by their look? It's not insurrection, because insurrection is a legal term.
This much, but I dare say, hold on, I dare say that if we're comparing, maybe it's like being a little pregnant. You can't just be a little pregnant. It either is or it isn't, and I don't think that's the case. I think I do think there are degrees here. I think if we are making a comparison.
Oh, that was more of a insurrection.
That's my point, right?
Because here's the reason why. Because those protesters who breached the fence of the White House, they were well organized.
Yes,
they had backup. They were armed. They had media coverage. They had political coverage. You see, an insurrection is a conspiracy where you have to have different facets working together. The January 6th. Was a blowhard president, God bless him, talking to his followers, many of whom suffer from the cult of personality. I get that. But the fact of the matter is, it was a mob attack on the Capitol, which is horrendous.
Yes.
But the Democrats have turned it into something it's not. And the very thing that they're accusing the Trump people supporters of doing, they've engaged themselves. And what's worse, we've had types of insurrections. Look, what about during the Gorsuch and Kavanaugh hearings when they shut down the Senate?
Yes.
They stopped the proceedings of nominating Supreme Court justices. That is under the auspices of insurrection. Again, the hypocrisy. But here's Mercedes Slapp.
Yeah.
Put this out yesterday. I was going to read it. She said, reminder that the January 6th committee is being led by Representative Bernie Thompson, who voted to overturn the 2004 election, Representative Jamie Raskin, who voted to overturn the 2016 election, and Representative Adam Schiff, who claimed for years that he had proof of Russian collusion.
Right.
So, again, these people running this committee have all done literally. They've done literally what they're accusing Trump of doing.
And this gets into something that Biden said yesterday on Jimmy Kimmel. Here's what he had to say about Republicans not following the rules.
Look, the Republicans don't play it square. Why do you play it square?
Yeah.
Well, guess what? If we do the same thing they do, our democracy will literally be in jeopardy.
Well,
not a joke.
No, it's not a joke. And guess what? And let me stop the share here. I mean, this is the problem, right? Is that they do not play by the rules, and they accuse.
Well, here's a question.
Hold on, Jerry. It was not Republicans who used the FBI both before the 2016 election as a tool to influence that election,
right?
Who then used the FBI as a tool after the election to both intimidate and investigate and surveil members of the Trump cabinet, who then the director of the FBI. Remember, James Comey said, he admitted that they took advantage of the chaos in the early days of the Trump administration to send over a couple of guys to go and intimidate Michael Flynn, the nominated national security advisor. Right? He admitted this. I'm not making this up. And what was the end result, right? I mean, Mike Flynn was convicted of bullied into this of paperwork violations, right? Nothing ever substantive.
They threatened to jail his son.
Yes,
they did to throw trumped up charges at his son if he did not admit to.
And the end result is complete chaos in the national security apparatus, and making this not just making this administration, making the new administration look weak, but also weakening the incoming administration.
But again, this is the frustration, because we have this January 6th committee. You have it's by the way, it was founded, right? It was established almost a year ago, July of last year. It has had myriad committee hearings. It has had press coverage. It's had support from the media and from Hollywood. And if I decide that this is a show trial, well, then I'm accused of covering up.
Sure.
Covering up what?
All right. So let's tell you what, with that, because I want to talk about that issue. It's time for the bottom line.
The bottom line.
Jerry, I'm so glad you brought up that concept, because I am someone who raised the issue of the Stalinist show trial, or frankly the Maoist show trial.
That's what this is,
because essentially what they're doing, and we know why are they doing this? Well, they're doing this because their numbers are terrible, and they hope to distract some Americans. They want to remind people. I'm actually surprised they're not doing this in the fall, but I think they realize that all of these people who are on this committee need to be out there campaigning to hold on to their phony baloney jobs, so they got to do it now. But the reality is they're doing this because they want to try to distract Americans and peel off some Americans. And it's not going to work, because as you pointed out, Americans just aren't interested in this.
Well, I have a question for you.
Please. Yes, sir.
What is it? Because here's what you hear from the committee members, from Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney was the wife. Liz Cheney is the Liz
daughter.
Cheney, of course. And what you hear from Schiff and from others, Jamie Raskin, they talk about this wide conspiracy. They talk about the actors and how it was well organized and all the rest of it. But they haven't presented any of this.
Well, they're presenting it tonight. I mean, that's the thing.
So that's the question then. What is your expectation? What's the big smoking gun?
Well, I don't know if there is a smoking gun, right? I think what it is, Jerry, is that if you create enough smoke, and you produce that smoke thickly enough and expertly enough, you can distract people into realizing that there's really no fire, right? It's like this. It's like a big concert. Produces, a good concert will produce smoke, and maybe they'll have some pyrotechnics. But at the end of the day, it's not really a fire. No one's really firing cannons on the stage. They're not really lighting off fire while some of them are lighting. Hold on.
The big risk here is that they're going to fail spectacularly.
Well, that's a hope too. There's certainly a hope that is involved. But let's put a spotlight on this for a second. When I say this, that it's a show trial in the Maoist sense or the Stalinist sense, it's that you're putting folks on display who have no real opportunity or ability to defend themselves. You present a lot of evidence, but all of that evidence is one-sided, so that there is no cross-examination that is done, right? Because you have one perspective on this committee, and Nancy Pelosi and others have engineered it so there aren't the Jim Jordans of the world or anybody else able to offer up a response there in real time. because of course, Jerry, if they did that, that would just be Republicans confusing the issue, right? It wouldn't be an actual defense of the situation. So it becomes it's a sham. It is literally all about presenting a case and using enough, right? This is why you hire the former head of ABC News to slickly produce it. It's about creating enough, video clips and sound clips and taking things out of context so that you're dazzling people, so that in the end they think that they've learned something. They think that they've seen a smoking gun when there's really no there.
I remember early in the process, Mark Meadows' emails were released, and you had again Liz Cheney and Adam Schiff and Jamie Raskin and the rest saying that this was proof of a conspiracy.
Yes.
Because conservative media were texting him and emailing him, stop this. You got to get the president to say something.
Yes.
But again, the irony there is that if this was a conspiracy, there would have to be cover for them in the media.
Yes.
So the most friendly Trump media outlet, Fox News, was texting and emailing the chief of staff, get the president to say something. This is terrible.
Yeah.
Again, they thought it was like, aha. But in actuality, it proves that it wasn't a conspiracy.
Right. But let's take the other part of this, which is, right, they want to see how many, I'm not going to use it. There was a certain phrase I was going to, they want to see how many Republicans they can cancel in order to regain other aspects of power. So they want to go after, they're going to go after Ginny Thomas. Like, I know one of the things that's going to come out of this, if not tonight, then certainly when they come back on the air in a couple of weeks, right? Because this is not just tonight, it's in a couple of weeks as well, as Jerry pointed out to me the other day. That one of the results is there's going to be renewed demands for Clarence Thomas to step down. Because of Ginny Thomas and Ginny Thomas's text messages to Mark Meadows. There's going to be renewed calls to indict Donald Trump, and probably renewed calls to indict members of Donald Trump's family. Right? That's where they're going to go there. They're going to go after conservative organizations. Right? They've already started on the gun issue. They've already started to go after Heritage. They're going to go after others. They're going to use this as a springboard to go after everybody. Now, as you've said, and I think accurately, they are going to overreach because, again, most Americans don't care about what happened on January 6, 2021 anymore. I mean, they think it's serious. And again, not that I should have to say this, but I do. What happened was a tremendously dark day for America that day, but an insurrection it was not. But the reality is most Americans are seeing what's happening on those prices at the gas pump, or empty shelves at the supermarket, or the economy shrinking. First-time mortgage applications are down. Let me digress for a second, Jerry, because some lefty was on social media saying that, talking about how they had some Republican senator who's retiring, they had offered to buy his house, and the price kept going down, and they were able to underbid and get the house. And this is evidence that, in fact, inflation is not a bad thing.
What?
And listen, it's specious reasoning, to say the least. But to me, it's emblematic of the fact that we are about to face a major bubble in housing.
Oh yeah,
housing prices have shot up, and so we're seeing the beginnings of that bubble. First-time mortgage applications are down, and so look, if you're looking to sell your house, try to sell it now, because it's going to be very difficult to do in the weeks and months ahead.
I mean, I want to respond to this real quick,
please.
But then I want to get back to the committee, and that is, there is no easy way out of the economic mess we're in.
Yes,
because if you want to slow inflation, you have to raise interest rates. But if you raise interest rates, then small businesses don't have the resources, right? Because they borrow, they won't have the resources to expand. And so where we're heading is to a 1970s style stagflation.
Stagflation, absolutely.
That's where we're heading. So, but however, back to the committee, I want to say this.
But hold on. Back to come back to the committee, and then I want to say something about what you just said about economics.
So back to the committee just for a second, and that is, you're right about Ginny Thomas. You're right about Heritage, because Ginny Thomas was talking about how there were irregularities in the 2020 election. There was talk about conversations about not seating perhaps this delegation from the Electoral College, et cetera, et cetera. And that's going to seem damning.
Yes.
But the problem is that this is what happens every election. And again, Jamie Raskin on the floor of the House refused to accept the Electoral College. Bernie Thompson, the chairman of this committee, in 2004, he voted to overturn the 2004 election. And one last point.
Yeah.
2016, Hillary Clinton hired law firms in specific states to come up with strategies to have alternative electors seated.
Yes.
So they've done this.
Sorry, time out for a second. I'm so glad you brought that up, because it's exactly where I was going. A lot of folks don't know. In 2008, I was going to be an elector if for John McCain. Not happy about this. Say what you will, but in 2008, I was a Republican Party official in Maryland. John McCain was the nominee. I was going to be an elector for John McCain from the 1st Congressional District. Now, that was 2008. In 2016, I began to get inundated with emails from people who thought that I was an elector and begging me to switch my vote. And the emails were all eerily the same. And it was very clear that someone had gotten together a list of old electors. Set aside for the fact, by the way, that I was no longer living in the 1st Congressional District of Maryland, but I was besieged. And I'm pretty sure, Jerry, that if we peeled back the onion, we would have found that it was some affiliate of the Hillary Clinton campaign that had organized and gotten this bad list together. Yet another bad move by the 2016 Hillary Clinton campaign, and was organizing, emailing electors to get them to switch their votes.
Yeah,
I got those emails. So does that mean that I was that the folks were trying to commit an insurrection by trying to convince me? I certainly didn't think so at the time.
But this is the intellectual laziness of our media.
Yeah,
literally, what they're accusing Trump supporters of doing is a regular practice.
Yes.
Every single election cycle.
Listen, I don't know if it's a regular practice every single election. I think it is certainly in the modern era, it has become more regular.
Okay. But
because it's easier to do
every election in my lifetime.
Yes.
There has been monkey business and legal strategies in terms of the Electoral College. My point is,
and by the way, hold on. And by the way, one of the goals of this J6 hearing is to get rid of the Electoral College. Go ahead.
Yeah, which of course would be insane.
Yes.
Because then we would be governed essentially by LA and New York.
Yes.
So
again, you were going to say.
Well, I was going to say this. I don't understand why the Republicans, and again, maybe Fred Smith, our old mentor, boss at CEI, was right. The Republican Party is just so stupid.
Yes, there's the evil party and the stupid party.
I would do is I would take Jeremy Raskin's speech on the floor of the House. I would take Bernie Thompson, who's the chairman of this committee, and I would play in a loop. Like on Twitter, the RNC should play in a loop. They're refusing to seat electors.
Yes.
In 2016. That was Jamie Raskin, and 2004. That was Bernie Thompson. And it's not just them. There are myriad Democratic representatives who after the 2000 election, the 2004 election, and the 2016 election, they refused. They voted. They literally listen to my voice.
I'm telling you,
they literally voted to overturn the elections.
Yes, Jamie Raskin, who is lionized on the left now as this great constitutional scholar, and was at the center of this. Jerry, I want to go back to something you said earlier, just real quick, because
the economy.
On the economy.
Yeah.
I have a very simple recipe for all of this. And it starts with
sell your house and move to Ireland. That's what
okay. I will listen. Sell your house, move to Ireland, and then get one of those inflatable Irish pubs and put it in your backyard. that way you have your Irish pub. But there are things that they can do to spur economic growth, and it starts with a little bit of certainty, and it starts with not monkeying around with the the granular details of our economy through the regulatory process, right? If Joe Biden announced today that they were going to, first thing they were going to do was engage. They don't have to declare the Defense Production Act, but they can say we are going to make every regulatory tool available to make it easier for people to drill for oil and natural gas in the United States and coal. That would send an immediate signal to the economy, an immediate signal on the gas price issue. And then if they said, if we are going to now institute, something,
however, the problem with that is,
I know what the problem is, Jerry. They would never do it.
No. There's a bigger problem. If let's say in fantasy world they would do it. There's no capital. There's no money to go drill.
But this is my other part of this, which is that then you have to deal with the other side of the regulatory process, which is you get rid of the whole ESG initiative over at the SEC. Get rid of the other regulatory impediments that are involved here, right? I mean, it's funny. We were talking to somebody the other day about green energy, right? And about the concept of battery-driven cars, et cetera. Okay, we can't mine for any of that stuff here in the United States because the regulatory barriers are so high. If you want to build solar cells here at home and you want to build better batteries here at home, okay, let us drill for the rare earth minerals here at home instead of having to go to China and do those things. We're actually, by the way, hold on.
Yeah.
We are going to be filing comments with the SEC on their ESG issue, both Institute for Liberty and the Institute for Regulatory Analysis and Engagement. That rulemaking is happening right now as well. Go ahead, Jerry.
You mentioned green energy. I have to say this because there was a report today. By the way, I'm sitting this morning having a cup of coffee, and Erica, my wife, she loves to watch the Weather Channel in the morning.
Yeah,
and I get a kick out of it because the Weather Channel has become an eco indoctrination channel.
Yeah,
and so they're talking about all the rain that we had in the Washington D.C. The D.C. Baltimore corridor, and how there's flooding in Ellicott City, and how a concert venue was watered out, so to speak, rained out. And then they go in to say, normally this would be good news because of the saturation and the moisture, but already this region is oversaturated because of climate change. And then they quickly go to another segment about another part of the country where they're experiencing drought. And of course, that is climate change.
Because of climate change.
Yeah. And I'm sitting there and Erica's next to me. I'm like, yeah. Oh, there's the sun, climate change. Oh, there's the moon, climate change. But to your point about so they did this on the news today. I saw this this bit where the CEO of one of the big car companies drives out an electric car and puts it at a charging station, and a reporter, maybe the reporter didn't even understand what he was asking. Where's this electricity? How's it being produced? Well, it's from the grid. Oh, and they talked to the guy from the energy companies right there. Well, yeah. Where's this power coming from? From coal.
90% of it was coming from coal.
So my point is, I told this to my kids earlier today. This idea that green energy is a solution is a myth. The electric car, the components, the battery in particular, you have to destroy the earth. Strip mine, use slave labor in places like China and Africa in order to get these rare earth material that is not sustainable because there's not a limitless supply. So the electric car is burning fossil fuel, coal, and it's strip mining the earth. It is not a green solution.
And I want to go back to something you said, Jerry, because you talked about the problem of stagflation and waving a magic wand, and most importantly, the issue of capital access.
Yes.
I'm going to take 30 seconds of personal privilege to talk a little bit about this. These regulatory costs are not done in a vacuum. We know that in terms of direct regulatory costs on the economy, so this is my background. For those of you who don't know, I was a regulatory lobbyist and advocate for many years. I was on the Small Business Administration's Regulatory Fairness Board. Anyway, and then I'm using SBA numbers, by the way, at least for the first, some of them. We know that the regulatory cost to the economy, the direct regulatory cost during the Obama administration doubled from $1.1 trillion to $2.25 trillion, a little bit more than doubling. So that means that out of the economy, I'm not saying that we need to exist in a zero regulation environment, but we have to recognize that in an economy that is right now about $19 trillion in size, $20 trillion in size, capital is flowing out for the interests of the government to the tune of about $2.25 trillion. And that number didn't grow appreciably. It grew a little bit under the Trump administration, but certainly for the first couple of years of the Trump administration, it was only growing by about 1% to 2% per year, which had been unheard of beforehand, certainly under the Obama administration where it grew so drastically. We also know that for every dollar in direct regulatory cost, there's a $19 multiplier in lost opportunity cost. And this is done, the work done by some economists at Appalachian State, North Carolina State University. They're the ones who came up with this. And so when we're talking about the Biden administration hitting the accelerator on regulatory costs, this contributes to the stagnation of the economy. As our friend Wayne Cruz at the Competitive Enterprise Institute says, you don't have to teach small businesses you don't have to teach the grass how to grow. You just have to remove the rocks from the lawn that are weighing them down. That's where we are. And every time we turn around, administrations like the Biden administration, they want to put more rocks on the lawn. You spend some time getting rid of those rocks, it helps to go a long way towards getting businesses their capital back. I want to use an example real quick. It's like this. And Jerry talks about the broken windows theory of policing. There's also the broken windows theory of economics, which says that let's say that you are you own a glass company, a window company, and your business is flagging. So you send somebody from your business down to the local strip mall one night to throw rocks in the window of all of those businesses. Well, they now have to come to you to get your windows. And the left would say, in the same way that they talk about regulation, well, regulation stimulates the economy because it creates new jobs and new industries. Well, the broken window, the window replacement company, they may be the ones making money, but what they're doing is they're siphoning capital away. If a business has to pay $1,000 to replace their window, that's $1,000 that they can't spend on upgrades to their computers to make their processes more efficient, or on repairing some manufacturing machine or upgrading that manufacturing machine. And so you have to remember that these things have an impact. So there are things that can be done. Yeah. The Biden administration just won't embrace them.
But you're right on all of it. The regulatory route that you speak of, look, there's a reason why during the Trump administration, the first 3 years, we saw unprecedented wage growth. We saw job growth. We saw economic growth, and it was because he was sunlighting. He was reevaluating regulations.
Yes,
he was getting sunsetting. What did I say? Sunlighting.
You said sunlighting, but it's a good term to use because he was doing two things, right? He was sunsetting rules that were outmoded and expensive, but he was also putting sunlight on processes that had gone far too long in the dark. It's a great way to put it, Jim.
And it worked. And so we again, I say this on my radio show all the time. There is no problem in front of us that there is no solution. We can get out of the economic mess. We need to stop spending. The number one thing to do to get us out of the mess immediately. It's not even immediate is the wrong term to use, but we have to stop putting government dollars into the economy. We just have to stop doing it. There's too much government spending. Long term. It's the regulatory issues you've talked about, but you're right. Unfortunately, the Democratic Party is captured by what is it, Andrew? It's kind of this religiosity
it's statism. I mean, it is.
But you would think there was a time when a liberal or a conservative confronted with the reality of their failed policy preferences would compromise, change their minds, and do something different.
Well, that gets into the faith issue in the articles of
right. The Democratic Party seems to be unable. I mean, Larry Summers, who's a Democrat,
yes,
has been warning this administration about their spending policies and how it will cause inflation. He's now saying, "Watch out, we're going to have recession." and no one's listening to him.
One of my favorite scenes from that movie, the Social Network, the one about Facebook, is the guy playing Larry Summers. When the Winklevoss twins are in his office and he calls his assistant and he says, "Can you come in?" And she comes and he goes, "Can you punch me in the face? Can you punch me in the face?" I hope that was real. But that's exactly right. Let's remember, Bill Clinton, when confronted with the contract with America, had to make changes to the way he governed.
Yes.
Right. They didn't do everything that the Republicans in Congress wanted, but he did do a lot. And so things like the Regulatory Flexibility Act were passed and implemented, signed into law.
Welfare reform.
But the point is, there's a reason why that some of the environmental policies of the Clinton administration didn't do worse damage to the economy was because of things like the Regulatory Flexibility Act and SPRE for the Small Business Regulatory Enforcement Fairness
It's interesting. The Clinton years were, of course, was the last time that in a fiscal year America had a balanced budget.
Right, and because Bill Clinton recognized, and again, right, you think about these things. Now, I'm not saying I'm not going to pass judgment as to whether or not the impeachment of Bill Clinton was the right thing or the wrong thing to do. We're not going to talk about Monica Lewinsky, and we talk about this. But on retrospect, right, you think about how the balance and not the collegiality necessarily, but sort of the recognition of concrete realities by both parties and how that drove. And maybe that's the big change, Jerry, is that on the progressive left, there has been this push towards untethering objective reality, right? Something I've talked about.
Look. Obviously, I have a perspective. I'm a conservative, but that doesn't mean that I don't want a functioning, pragmatic Democratic Party.
Yes.
We had on, and again, we didn't get the tape, but we'll have her back.
We're going
to
probably have her back next Friday.
Hannah Cox talked about how there's problems with both parties, and of course that's true. But I do think sometimes our friends on the right do a kind of moral equivocation where they are allowing that
I know where you're. Hold on, Jerry. I know where you're going with this. Let me see if I can sum it up for you. It is essentially we still believe that we ought to be able to work together, and so we go out of our way to try to be cooperative and collegial, and it inevitably bites us on the
it doesn't work. And the thing is, and I'm sorry, I don't think both parties are equally at fault, but our side is compelled to do that.
It is, as someone recently said, why is invariably when the Democrats are talking about how there are multiple truths, why is it that we always have to go along with their truth? Why don't they ever come and acknowledge our truth, right? Why is it that we are bad for saying that bees are not fish? That we're evil for that. Why are we bad for saying that maybe, just maybe, a lot of young people who have decided that they are gender fluid, trans, oh God, what's the other one? It's whatever LGBTQIA, one of those. Why when we say that a certain percentage of them, I don't know, maybe trying to follow the trends of the world. Why is it that when we say, because we didn't even get into it with the gun legislation today, when we say, okay, we have to have a conversation in America about what constitutes an adult. Is it 18? Is it 21? Is it 26? Right? Why is it that you have to be 21 to buy a gun, but you don't have agency, enough to buy a gun at age 18, but you have agency at age 16, 15, 14 to determine whether or not you are a different gender, whether or not you want to have some kind of gender mutilation surgery, or have, physiology altering hormones injected into your body. You can't do that. We want to lower the voting age to 16, but we want you to stay on your parents' health insurance until you're 26.
Yeah. Here's
the reality, Jerry. Hold on for a second. I would be happy, and I'll say this, maybe I'm wrong here, talking about compromises, and maybe I'm trying to compromise too much, but let's make 21. If we want to make 21 the adult age, let's make 21 the adult age.
From voting to smoking to drinking to serving in the military.
Let's just make it 21. 21 is the age of getting off your parents' insurance at age 21, unless you're in college.
I mean, look, in many states, California, New York,
in fact,
a 14-year-old.
Maybe that's what we write our op-ed our first Andrew and Jerry Save the World op-ed. Maybe that's what it should be on.
But the challenge is that you have to open up the constitutional amendment process because of the voting age.
That's fine. I don't care about that. Listen, again, that's fine. Let's have that. Maybe it's time, and maybe that's the title. Maybe it's time to repeal. What is it? The 24th Amendment, right?
I forget. Yeah.
All right. Maybe it's time to repeal the 24th and bring the voting age back to 21. Listen, I want to shift gears, Jerry, because we've talked about some intense stuff today. I have something fun for you that I want to say. So let me share the screen, pull this over here. And then remind me, we got a couple of other things to take care of. I woke up 3 in the morning a couple of weeks ago and was thinking about stuff. And I was thinking about the band, the Small Faces. Are you familiar with the Small Faces, Jerry?
Oh my goodness, of course.
Okay. So Steve Marriott, who founded the band, Ronnie, I think it was Ronnie Wood. The Small Faces later became the Faces with Rod Stewart as the front man. Steve Marriott later went on to form Humble Pie. And as I'm reading about the Small Faces and Steve Marriott, I come across a little anecdote, Jerry, about the song "Whole Lotta Love" by Led Zeppelin.
Yeah.
And an anecdote from Steve. Now it's from Steve Marriott, who says that Robert Plant, when Led Zeppelin was forming, right out of the old Yardbirds, that Robert Plant beforehand was a big fan of the Small Faces, would come around to their concerts. And when he heard "Whole Lotta Love," it sounded an awful lot like a song by the Small Faces called "You Need Loving."
Now, before you play this,
yeah,
I'm just going to. I haven't heard this yet. I believe this is wrong, and I'll tell you why in a second. But go ahead.
All right. No. And keep in mind that all of this stuff is because a lot of British rock in the mid to late 60s was based upon American blues.
Yes.
And so "Whole Lotta Love" was based on that, but it's not, it's how the Faces did "You Need Loving." I want you to listen to this. I'm about 20 seconds into it. All right, here you go. All right, I'm going to pause it there, Jerry. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are this. This is the Small Faces adding on to Willie Dixon's "You Need Love."
Yes.
And I think Muddy Waters, there's a Muddy Waters version of it. So the Small Faces, Jimi Hendrix in America, Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page, all the Jeff Beck, Rod Stewart, when he was all these guys were big fans of American blues. And so the Willie Dixon song, "You Need Love,"
yes,
I'm sure this is an adaptation of that. And of course, Robert Plant has said freely that "Whole Lotta Love" Zeppelin song is based on the Muddy Waters version of "You Need Love."
I'm not going to pull it up now. I'll pull it up next. But I will say this much: Steve Marriott said he heard Zeppelin's version of it, and he let's not mince words.
But remember,
hold on.
Nothing else sounds the same in that song, other than the kind of the groaning lyric.
The lyrics, but also the way Steve Marriott is singing it. It also sounds like, something. It reminded me of "How Many More Times" by Zeppelin.
Yeah.
How many more times?
Yeah. But again, based on
But my point is this: Steve Marriott heard "Whole Lotta Love," and he said, "Oh, isn't that?" Steve Marriott thought it was great. I mean, he never weighed in as to whether or not
Can you play
a ripoff.
Can you play "Whole Lotta Love" real quick?
The original "Whole Lotta Love"?
I mean, no, Zeppelin's version.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, play that real quick. And again, Led Zeppelin's first two albums, Led Zeppelin 1, Led Zeppelin 2, were were carry-ons, adaptations, heavier versions of American blues.
Yes, well, of course they were, but I mean, so were so many of the
but then Led Zeppelin 3 was more, Led Zeppelin 3 came out in 1973, way before the punk scene. And if you listen to Led Zeppelin 3, Led Zepp gets they're the first heavy metal band. I make the argument. You listen to Led Zeppelin 3, they could be the first punk band.
By the way, Led Zeppelin 3, my favorite Led Zeppelin album.
Yeah, a lot of punk, a lot of funk, a lot of acoustic, and so go ahead, play it.
By the way, we're gonna get dinged on this. They're probably gonna wind up muting this stuff. So, but anyway, we'll see. So, just so you know, here's I put in about 20 seconds to A Whole Lot of Love. You get the picture.
You get it, but again, those two songs are completely different.
Well, they're different. I mean, they're different. They're different-ish.
The whole lot that whole lot of love riff is the reason Van Halen existed.
Yes.
That is unique. That now is interesting. Can you pull up Willie Dixon's "You Need Love"?
Willie Dixon's, or do you want Muddy Waters?
Muddy Waters. I'm sorry, Muddy Water. Muddy Waters. You need. I think it's called "You Need Love."
You Need Love. Yeah.
You Need Love.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's going to be. Hold on, because they may give me an ad.
Nope.
Yeah, they're not giving me an ad. So hold on for 1 second.
Shoot, a music show.
Yeah, you know.
You got yarning.
See?
Sure.
That's a whole lot of love. Even the inflection, the inflection.
I still think that Steve Marriott's inflection is very similar to that, Jerry.
I don't know.
You know something? But
who was the Small Faces ripping off then?
Well,
Muddy Waters.
Muddy Waters, yes.
Yeah, right. All right.
I wonder if anybody's done a mashup of those things.
But again, if I get it. Yeah. But Muddy Waters deserves credit there.
Not casting aspersions. I am a much bigger fan of Led Zeppelin than I am of Small Faces. I just got it in my head. Boy, you know something? I've always been interested in how Steve Marriott founded Humble Pie, and then that came up. Because I'd heard 30 Days in the Hole earlier that day. Let's shift gears real quick, Jerry. Because you've got a very important birthday in your family.
Well, this week, my dad, my father, Big Jerry, 84.
Wow.
84 years old. And, I talk about my dad a lot on the radio show, but I don't want to get,
get emotional.
I don't want to, I don't want to,
emotional.
But
you're getting emotional. Your dad's a great man, Jerry, and
there's no better man.
But here, something, let's talk about this for a second, because, you think about this, you think about when we were kids. And you imagine, 84 being immeasurably old. And I'm sure your dad is like my dad in that he just does not seem 84, does he?
Well, my dad has slowed down. I think like for instance, he was cute yesterday. He woke up and my mom was like, just earlier in the morning, "Hey Jerry, it's your birthday." "Oh, it is? How old am I?" You know what I mean? So but however, you get my dad, sitting in his chair, and you want to start talking about stories and the things he's done. Again, ranging from, I was once on Park Avenue. I drove my mom and dad into the city. Their accountant was there to do their taxes at the time, and we're walking out, and there's this big skyscraper building in front of us. And my father was like, "Yeah, I laid the foundation for that building." Wow. I was like, "What?" And then he told me another story about the D line in the New York City Transit Authority. He laid the track for that.
That's amazing.
And there are parts of New York City that wouldn't exist but for my father's work, labor.
That's
amazing. And it's not just that. I mean, I tell this story all the time about how, when I was going through my cool phase, 16 years old, and my feathered Bon Jovi hair, And every year my family went into Radio City Music Hall to see the tree. And my father warned me. He goes, "Hey kid, you're going to be cold. You're going to be cold." And I just wanted to wear a sweater because I had my chain and my hair.
Of course.
And sure enough, we go into New York City and I am freezing.
Yes.
Uncomfortable. It was painful. My father took his coat off and gave it to me, and never said, "I told you so."
That's funny.
Hey kid, this is too much for me. Put it on. And just one other quick story, just of the character of this guy.
Yeah.
I can tell you other stories too about him taking care of yo-yos on the streets.
Yes.
But my father, Eric and I moved into a new apartment. And we're painting the kitchen, and Erica spilled a can of paint.
Wow.
And I was angry.
Oh.
I was angry toward Erica. And my father, my father was an Irish guy. Painting is like second nature to him.
Yeah.
So he quickly cleans it up and does this and does that. And we had to bring the drop cloth outside. He goes, "Hey kid, come with me. Let's get rid of this stuff." I'm like, "All right." We go outside. He goes, "Listen, Jerry, I would never say this in front of your wife." He said, "But that was wrong." He said, "You never, ever correct your wife, yell at your wife in front of someone else."
Absolutely.
And he said, "Don't ever do that again." I said, "Yes." But the thing is, he took me outside to tell me.
Yes.
You see, but even I'm a married man, and my father's still teaching me lessons,
Of course.
appropriately on how to be a man.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I'm 100%, Jerry. I mean, I totally get that. It makes perfect sense to me, having been in those situations with my own father.
Yeah. Do you see yourself? Do you see in yourself your father? Like you look in the mirror? Me too, all the time.
And certainly when I talk, I tell a story because it's funny you say that. My dad and I have had our careers overlap at various points in time, and I'll never forget being at a meeting on OSHA issues, occupational safety and health issues in DC. And gathered around a bunch of a bunch of folks who are working on these issues. And I said my name, because as we do at meetings, people introduce themselves. I'm Andrew Langers when I was at the National Federation of Independent Business. And a guy at the other end of the table did a double take. Maybe it was a lady. It was a guy at the other end of the table did a double take. And it was someone who had worked with my dad on OSHA issues in the 1970s. And it was that nice, connection there in those.
Yeah.
Hold on, Jerry.
So
I tell a story about my dad though. When Jan was deployed in 2007, it's so funny. It's the second time I talked about this today. When Jan was deployed in 2007, listen, it's tough. It's tough on kids, and Abby was having a particularly tough time at the time. And I asked my dad for advice on this, and my dad gave me some very sage advice on parenting at the time. And it's because a lot of folks don't know this. I'll say this now. My mother died when I was very little. My natural mother died. My dad remarried, and I love my stepmom to death. My dad was a single dad for a while, and so I asked him sort of how he did it, how he sort of kept me and my sister on an even keel. And he gave me some good advice. And it was, I wasn't 40 yet. No. Yeah, I was not 40 yet.
All right. And we have breaking news here. I'm going to tell you this in a second. But I want to say this real quick. So by the way,
Jerry telling me without telling me he was not listening to my story. He was checking his phone, but go ahead.
No. So something popped up real quick. I want to say, I was listening about the sage advice. I was listening, but everyone in my family calls me baby Jerry or little Jerry.
Sure, of course, LJ.
And it's never ever bothered me. I love being called little Jerry. And but the thing is I like going and seeing people who I haven't seen in a while, old friends, family, and they are struck. They're like, "Holy cow, Jerry, you are a mirror image of your father."
Yeah.
And I always feel very proud about that.
And that's the highest compliment.
So listen to this. Michigan GOP gubernatorial candidate arrested on January 6th riot-related charges.
Holy cow.
Now, this is, again, he's in FBI custody. This is tyranny. And I don't know the substance here yet, but I will say this. Without knowing anything, I'll say this. This is tyranny. This is how tyranny starts. Well, so you have, again.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I mean, I mean, this is insanity.
This is why I was saying that the timing of the indictment of those 6 Proud Boys for seditious conspiracy cannot be denied. There's a reason why that happened today, because that will be center stage in this January 6th hearing thing tonight. They will make that a center stage point. They will make the charging of the Proud Boys with seditious conspiracy a part and parcel of this. So you'll read more about it. Listen, before I let you go, Jerry, because we are coming up on time here, are you doing any fill-ins in the next week? You are, aren't you?
I'm struck by this. I cannot believe that the Justice Department will interfere in a statewide election for governor.
I hesitate to talk about it because I haven't had a chance to read it yet. But we'll, if we need to do a supplement, we'll do a supplement. Are you filling in at all?
Well, my show on Sunday, Erica's birthday, by the way, June 12. I'm doing my show on WBAL, but I'm also going to be on June 16th and June 20th. I'm doing a late night show on both nights.
That's right. You're doing those things. So real quick, you and I are also doing a special supplemental show on Monday night. We'll get it up there. We are interviewing. I want to make sure I got these guys' names right. We are going to be interviewing Bert Kearns and Jeff Abraham. They are the authors of a book called The Show Won't Go On. They've had storied careers in terms of comedy and television and the history of TV. A little fun interview that we're doing. I am going to be back on filling or co-hosting with Larry O'Connor on the 29th and 30th of June. And then again, for the entirety of July 4th week, I will be in. Larry is going to be off, so I will be in what they call the first chair, filling in. I want to thank you all for tuning in. You can catch those, by the way, if you missed my my co-hosting stints this week, those are available on the WMAL website and also on Stitcher. So go and check those out. It's a different show than what we've done. But Jerry, as you're reading through that, you are in fact.
This is insane. I mean, look, again, I know we're close.
Go ahead. Tell us about it. We'll talk about it for a minute.
No, look, just recently, right? Peter Navarro was arrested, put in shackles, leg irons, was put in solitary confinement for contempt of Congress. And again, because he refused to give testimony.
And more to the point, he could have been arrested at home. They waited for him.
He lives 1 mile. He lives one. By the way, he lives 1 mile from FBI headquarters.
Yeah, they could have arrested him in his home, but instead they waited for him to go to the airport and arrested him there and put him in handcuffs and shackles.
And then refused him counsel, refused him food and water, locked him in solitary confinement. But here's the thing. It was for contempt of Congress.
Yes.
Number one, in my memory, I can't remember anyone ever being arrested for contempt of Congress.
I don't know. It's possible, but on the other hand, but certainly not done.
All right, that's number one. Number two, and again, I don't understand why our side isn't offering up facts. The January 6th committee is illegitimate.
Yes,
because the manner in which it was formed breaks House rules.
Yes.
So in a very serious way, this committee doesn't have any jurisdiction, doesn't have subpoena power. Well, and so it doesn't.
Yes. And that gets into why it would be improper to charge him with contempt of Congress. I mean, the reality is, right, that this gets into the concept of this being a show trial. Jerry, I mean, do you have more details about what happened in Michigan?
No, but again, if what this administration, look, I'll end it here, Andrew. I know we have to go. I have to go too. But the bottom line is this. They lied to us about the Russia collusion. They lied. And when I say lied, I'm talking about the Department of Justice. I'm talking about the FBI. I'm talking about the Obama administration. I'm talking about members of Congress and the media. Lied to us that Donald Trump colluded with the Russians to steal the 2016 election. They lied to us about that. The campaign, the Hillary campaign, understood that this was propaganda. These were lies, and still planted these stories and still let it go forward. And on top of that, we now know of the abuses of this January 6th committee, how prisoners are being treated, how we've politicized this. This is insane.
Yes. And now we're at arresting gubernatorial candidates.
Now, and mind you, remember this: the January 6th committee has been meeting and having hearings for a year.
Yeah.
And they arrest him today.
That's my point. Same thing with the Proud Boys. Yes, I agree with you wholeheartedly. On the day that they're going to do this show trial. Well, Jerry, it underscores what you say every week, which is
find the truth, plant your feet, and stand firm. I hope that still matters.
Yeah, me too. And as you know, the things that I always say, which is have a great week, everybody. Have fun. Please try to have fun. Oh, actually, before I say the other thing, congratulations to my daughter Abigail, who graduates from high school tomorrow. So
that's good news. That's good news.
But as I said, have a great week, everybody. Have fun and stay safe.